Saldivar, guilty of the offense of murder, is alleged in the indictment.
The jury reaches a verdict. Yolanda Saldivar is found guilty of killing Tejano star Selena Quintanilla Perez. The verdict and the reaction. It's our top story tonight, Monday, October 23rd, 1995. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dot Pedersen. It is a verdict that thousands of Selena fans have been hoping for, and they believe justice has been done tonight. For the very latest, we go now to Mark Cabell, who joins us live from the Harris County Courthouse in Houston. Mark?
Good evening, Dot. The sounds of celebration all around the Harris County Courthouse. Horns blowing, people in the streets, people carrying signs, posters of Selena. The celebration is expected to continue throughout the night here. The streets are still open, and the cars have been streaming by with those horns ever since the verdict was read around 4 o'clock this afternoon. While there's jubilant celebration down here on the street, you could have heard a pin drop upstairs in the courthouse when that verdict was coming down. Cheryl Alexander was there and has more on the closing arguments that led up to the verdict tonight.
Selena's smiling face stared at the jury during the state's closing arguments. Chief Prosecutor Mark Skirka taped a color photo of the slain Tejano star on the wall of the courtroom. Then, holding up a grim autopsy photo, Skirka said, "She's been reduced to this. Selena left her mark on the world through her music. The defendant leaves her mark on Selena with a bullet hole in the back." The state portrayed Yolanda Saldivar as a manipulative, obsessed fan who pushed her way into Selena's life, then killed her when she realized Selena didn't trust her or want her around anymore. District Attorney Carlos Valdez showed jurors an oversized calendar of March, pointing out certain dates he believed are important to the case. It starts out on March 9th, when the Quintanillas confronted Saldivar, saying they believed she was stealing from Selena and they were taking their suspicions to the police. The calendar ends on March 31st with Selena's life. In between, there are numerous attempts by Selena to get business records from Saldivar and proof Saldivar purchased the murder weapon. The state calls the defense accident theory hogwash. Skirka says if it was an accident, why did Selena run all the way to the lobby? Why did witnesses report seeing Saldivar chase her with the gun and call her bitch? And why did the gun never again go off in the 9.5 hours Saldivar held police at bay? But the defense says Selena was the victim of a tragic accident, that it takes virtually no pressure to fire the gun, and that Saldivar's inexperience with weapons led to the shooting. Doug Tinker argued the state twisted the evidence against his client in order to get a murder conviction in the high-profile case. Co-counsel Fred Hagan said the jury can't trust the testimony of Police Sergeant Paul Rivera, who's the lead investigator in the case, and therefore should not convict Saldivar. The defense says the jury should believe the hostage negotiation tapes where Saldivar says the shooting was an accident, and the testimony of a Texas Ranger who overheard Saldivar tell police it was an accident.
The jury walked back into the courtroom here in Harris County around 4 o'clock this afternoon. The jury members were stone-faced as they walked into that jury box, and right after that is when they handed that verdict form to Judge Mike Westergren, and he read it, and now, as we all know, it did find Yolanda Saldivar guilty of murder.
Cheryl, tomorrow at 1 o'clock, the penalty phase. What can we expect? What are we going to see as far as the options that the jury will have as far as sentencing?
Both sides will be able to call witnesses. The state says they have about half a dozen witnesses. Defense attorney Doug Tinker hasn't said how many he has yet, but it's expected to last most of tomorrow afternoon. Now, the punishment for a murder conviction here in Texas is between 5 and 99 years or life in prison. But because Yolanda Saldivar has no previous criminal record, she can be eligible for probation.
All right, Cheryl Alexander, thanks a lot. You had a chance also to talk to prosecutors one-on-one after the verdict, and we'll hear more of that tonight.
That's right. Coming up here tonight at 10, only on Channel 6, we have a one-on-one exclusive interview with District Attorney Carlos Valdez and Nueces County Chief Prosecutor Mark Skirka, the two men who did the closing arguments in this case, and tonight say they are very happy and would like to tell the people there in Corpus Christi just exactly what happened in the courtroom.
All right, Cheryl Alexander, we'll see you back here at 10 o'clock. You know, we've been talking about this celebration that you can hear going on around us here at the Harris County Courthouse. We wanted to kind of take you down on the streets and give you some of the flavor. And rather than talk about it, it's really something you have to see and hear. Let's take you down to the streets right now. That's what it looked like. That's what it looked like, and that basically is how it sounded. That's how it still sounds out on the streets around the Harris County Courthouse right now. Were there any problems today? Well, we talked to one of the chief organizers for security from the Houston Police Department. He says no.
We've been real surprised. We've been pleasantly surprised. No problems. Everything has gone real orderly. Everybody's cooperated. Everything's just gone real well.
Good. Now, what police are a little bit worried about is, of course, after darkness here, there's going to be people on the streets. We understand there might be some candlelight vigils, and police are going to bring some extra officers out. They'll have more officers on horseback, too, just to keep an eye on the crowd. Dot.
All right, glad to know that the security is going to be there through the evening. I'm sure that things will continue. Mark, what about the rest of the scene around there? We understood that there was some thievery going on and that some stations were getting equipment stolen.
Unfortunately, one of the risks of the job, we've had 5 television cameras stolen since the Camp Saldivar here went up. Unfortunately, a camera from our competition here in Corpus Christi was stolen. We had other cameras stolen from Dallas, I believe one camera possibly from Houston, and of course the one that was stolen right here from our competition at KIII. So those are a hot commodity, and we understand there's a ring here in Houston that takes those cameras and sells them and ships them down to Mexico. So it's been an ongoing problem ever since the press has been set up here.
All right, I know it's just a zoo around there with all the people and everything. What about tomorrow? What can we expect as far as a timetable on how quickly all of the punishment phase will move along?
That's a good question. Right now we know how many people the prosecution will call during the punishment phase. Well, we don't know what the defense plans on doing as far as how many people they might bring up to talk about Yolanda Saldivar's character and whether or not they'll bring people up to talk about being lenient with a sentence. So it'll start at 1. I don't think it'll take all afternoon. We should get something probably early afternoon, and we'll probably have a similar scene to what you're seeing out here today as soon as the punishment is made public to the media and to all you people back in Corpus Christi.
All right, thank you, Mark and Cheryl. Thank you very much for your reports tonight. We'll hear from you more tonight at 10, of course. And that was Mark Cabell reporting live from Houston. Of course, a full report tonight at 10 o'clock. And our Yolanda Saldivar has been convicted of murdering Tejano singer Selena Quintanilla Perez. The punishment phase is set to begin tomorrow. Mark Cabell joins us live once again from Houston with an update. Mark?
Dot, you might be wondering, what about the families? Of course, the Quintanillas have been here for the entire 2 weeks. They took up the first 2 rows up in the courthouse today, up in the courtroom, I should say. I want to bring Cheryl Alexander back in because you were there. Give us the reaction, first of all, from the Quintanillas and then maybe from Saldivar's family.
To understand that Judge Mike Westergren made it very clear that he did not want any emotional outbursts in the courtroom, and he told anybody if they could not hold their emotions in to leave before the verdict was read. The Quintanilla family was very solemn when the verdict was read, but once after Abraham Quintanilla was out of the courtroom and the jury was gone, down in tears. The Saldivar family obviously very emotional, and Yolanda Saldivar broke down in tears. So did Doug Tinker's assistant Tina Rogers and the other female defense co-counsel Patricia Stamm. So it was a very difficult day for the Saldivars.
All right, Cheryl, thanks a lot. And Cheryl will have more from the prosecution team later on tonight at 10 o'clock. That was the scene here, very emotional for those upstairs, very emotional for the Selena fans down here on the streets, Dot.
All right, thank you, Mark and Cheryl. Once again, we look forward to your reports tonight at 10, wrapping everything up for us. We thank you for keeping it on 6 News, and we'll see you back here tonight at 10 o'clock.
That you can get justice in Houston, Texas. The prosecutor argued that common sense and all the evidence should convince anyone that Yolanda Saldivar shot the Tejano star on purpose. Not just killed her, he said, but shot her in the back. If the motel room shooting was an accident, he said, why did Saldivar run instead of using her nurse's training to help the woman she supposedly adored?
I've been telling you all along, this is a simple murder case. I expected a 2-week trial, and I expected a two-hour verdict, and I think the jury took a little longer, 2 hours and 20 minutes or something like that. But I'm not surprised by the quickness of the verdict.
But the defense countered that Saldivar was simply hysterical after the gun she intended to turn on herself fired accidentally.
I didn't mean to do it.
And like the prosecution, the defense acknowledged the publicity surrounding the sensational case, but said in light of their argument it was all unintentional. A not guilty verdict would not, they said, be unpopular. But jurors decided otherwise, convicting Yolanda Saldivar of murder. They'll decide her sentence, which could be life in prison, tomorrow afternoon. Dave Failing, CBS News, Houston.
Even before the verdict of guilty was announced today for Yolanda Saldivar, cars were driving up and down the street in front of Selena's home. Then when the guilty verdict was announced on radio, the traffic became even more crowded. Police dispatched extra patrol cars to control it. Cars were honking their horns. People were shouting their approval of the verdict. And banners and placards were displayed as the traffic increased. And it's been increasing ever since the verdict. Police expect it to continue throughout the evening. The people waiting outside the Quintanilla home were unanimously supportive of the verdict.
And I just want to thank me personally for everybody's prayers and everything, because we need to stick together. We're Hispanics. We need to stick together, and this is what she deserved.
I felt justice was done, but I also feel sorry for her family because they have to pay the price of what Yolanda did. But the Quintanilla family is paying a big price for that too, though.
The Quintanilla family was not believed to be in the home. They are said to be in.
She gets the maximum sentence, life in prison.
We, the jury, having found the defendant guilty of murder, assess her punishment of confinement in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for life.
Justice is handed down in the Yolanda Saldivar murder trial. We near the end of our ongoing top story tonight, Thursday, October 26, 1995. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dot Pedersen. It was a scene of contrast. Inside the Harris County Courthouse, Selena's former fan club president, now a convicted murderer, reportedly sobbed. Outside, hundreds cheered and honked their horns in celebration. And as he's done every night since this trial began, Mark Cabell is standing by live now in Houston. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Dot. This odyssey for Yolanda Saldivar started as a Selena fan. It progressed to the president of her fan club and now has ended with her spending the rest of her life in jail, eligible for parole in about 30 years. Let's take a look at some of the highlights from up in court today. After 9 hours of deliberations, Yolanda Saldivar was sentenced to life in prison today, and again, she will not be eligible for parole for 30 years. One man who was there for it all behind the closed doors of the jury chambers tells us why he was holding out for a lighter sentence today. And prosecutors, well, they are calling the decision an outstanding victory tonight, not only for them, but for Selena's thousands of fans. They say justice was served today.
You see all these people out here and their reaction.
It's heartwarming to see the reaction of Houston, and it's fair and just verdict delivered by the people of Houston.
Dot, that was Mark Skirka, one of the prosecutors in the case, and that was about 35 to 40 minutes after the decision came down. He was actually in the crowd of Selena fans along with Carlos Valdez. They were getting pats on the back and signing autographs and chatting with some of Selena's many fans outside the courthouse today.
Mark, the deliberations seemed to go on what seemed like forever. Why did it take so long today?
Well, it was definitely not as quick as the guilt phase of this trial. There was one single juror who just could not find it in his heart to give Saldivar the maximum sentence. Cheryl Alexander had a chance to talk with him earlier today, and he tells us why he was holding out for a lighter sentence.
58-year-old Charles Arnold walked into the jury box every day carrying a clipboard. The retired man sat on the back row in the far left chair. He started deliberations wanting Yolanda Saldivar sentenced to 40 years after family and friends testified she helped younger relatives with homework and took them to church.
You know, there's nothing we could do to bring the Selena's girl back, but I just was hoping that she could get like 40 years and do 20 and have a chance to come back into society.
Finally, he sided with the 11 other jury members. Arnold says probation was only mentioned and not seriously considered as an option. Although it took jurors a while to decide how long Yolanda Saldivar should spend in prison, Arnold says there was no question she was guilty of murder.
They said it was an accident. We didn't feel it was an accident because Selena was shot in the back and because Yolanda didn't throw the gun down and run after her to help her. She's a registered nurse, and also she didn't call 911.
But even after sitting in the jury box for the entire trial, Arnold says he still doesn't know why Yolanda Saldivar shot Selena.
And I would like to know what happened. I wish that she would have taken a stand and said what happened, you know?
Charles Arnold was the only one of the 12 jurors who decided they wanted to come and talk to the media. All of the others were bussed out of the Harris County Courthouse, taken to their cars, and then went on to continue their lives here in Harris County. Mark?
Cheryl, it's interesting. This is one of the same jurors. Not only is he the holdout juror, but one of the same jurors that the press caught napping during the closing argument. So you got to wonder just how attentive was he in court.
Exactly. This juror did come in, as I mentioned, with a clipboard every day. He would take notes. He was very attentive at some points. But during the closing arguments, he was seen nodding asleep. He even fell asleep, I guess you would want to say, so bad that his head fell back and hit the wall behind him. So we have wondered all along exactly what he was paying attention to. The one problem he says, and one of the reasons he held out, was he said he did not believe the testimony of Corpus Christi Police Sergeant Paul Rivera. Now, that is the sergeant who says he never heard Yolanda say she was sorry or that it was an accident and that he did not put it in the statement. So that was the problem he said he had with all of the testimony.
All right, Cheryl, thanks a lot. Maybe we can talk to you a little bit more before the end of this newscast. Well, that's what happened today here in Houston today, Dot. The trial is over. It took about 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks, and now the bill for the trial is heading back to Nueces County.
That's right. We're going to get to that right here, and Mark, of course, will come back to you in just a moment. Now that this trial is over, Nueces County officials will begin tallying up that final bill. How much will this trial cost us as taxpayers? Mike Sims takes a look.
The biggest murder trial in South Texas history is over. Now, taxpayers of Nueces County get to pick up the check. County commissioners had feared a bill upwards of $250,000. The good news, because of a speedy trial, the breakdown now looks like this. $50,000 for change of venue costs, like meals and hotel rooms, plus $50,000 for court costs and lawyers' fees. The estimated trial total, $100,000. Now, the bad news. That doesn't include the cost of housing Yolanda Saldivar in isolation for the 6 months before her trial began.
Anytime that you have an inmate that has to be placed under protective custody, you have to take extra precautions, and that's what the state is going to do, and that's what we're going to do when she comes back.
Before her trial, Saldivar spent her days by herself in this cell block made for 11 prisoners.
But now, when she comes back here to the Nueces County Jail, she'll be confined to this one-person lockup that doesn't have much more than a bed, a toilet, and a shower.
What's the cost for Saldivar's isolation room number 1? Take a look. Housing for an average prisoner at the Nueces County lockup per day costs $40. Saldivar's total comes in between $150 to $200 a day. The difference pays for added security, including a private security guard 24 hours a day. When will the extra costs stop? Whenever Saldivar is finally transferred to the state pen. Mike Sims, 6 News.
Yolanda Saldivar is expected to be brought here within the next 72 hours. After some paperwork, she'll be transferred to a state prison in Gatesville for processing, and then to another facility where she will serve out her sentence. And, of course, more later from Mark and Cheryl from Houston. But first, we want to take our first look.
Mexican restaurant on the city's north side to get that group's reaction when the word came down that Saldivar was going to spend the rest of her life in prison.
Well, I was thinking maybe at least she was 20, 30 years. At least that's what I thought she was getting. But that's good that she got it. That's good. I believe in that sentence was fair.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy for La Familia Quintanilla. And I'm glad that justice is being done. It was like if it was my own son.
I wasn't hoping for any particular sentence. What the community was saying that they wanted justice. And by the jury coming out with a life imprisonment, I think that is justice.
Those are certainly the sentiments held by many people, especially Selena's neighbors here on Bloomington Street, that justice has been served.
All right, at last, the end of a trial after more than 2 weeks. Thank you, Julie, very much, live from the Quintanilla neighborhood on the west side of Corpus Christi. Other news, remember...
And some of them are now home tonight after a very emotional couple of weeks in Houston.
Yes, Dot. Selena's mother and father, Abraham Quintanilla, have yet to arrive. However, Selena's husband, Chris Perez, along with other family members, did arrive from Houston just hours ago. Now, the crowds have dwindled somewhat, but that certainly wasn't the case just hours ago. We want to show you that, and also the Quintanilla family as they arrived from Houston just a little while ago. The Quintanilla family arrived home from Houston at about 7:30 tonight. Selena's husband, Chris Perez, says he's just glad the whole ordeal is over.
I'm pretty happy. That means we proved our point, and you know what I mean? So everything's cool. That's not going to bring her back, and like I said, I feel this much better, but I don't know. It just happened. I got to let it sink in.
Earlier, neighbors and passers-by gathered here at the home to show their satisfaction with the life sentence given to Yolanda Saldivar. They say justice was done.
I think it was. She could have something to think about what she's into, what she did.
And even the smallest fans knew what this day was all about. Why are you so happy?
Because what they did to Yolanda.
Still, there are those who believe no sentence is too great for Yolanda Saldivar.
I don't think anything is enough for Selena's life because it's not going to bring her back ever.
She'll always be with us forever. We'll never forget about her.
Dot, you know, a lot of those young girls you saw singing and dancing have yet since gone to bed, as well they should have. And even though this whole ordeal is over, we were reminded time and again by all the fans that would show up in force at Selena's house throughout the year that Selena's legacy and certainly her music will indeed live on forever. Reporting live from the house where Selena grew up, I'm Eddie Flores. Now back to you, Dot.
All right. Thank you, Eddie, for your report. We do hope that the family and the fans and neighbors can all get back to normal a little bit now that it's all over. Well, the Selena story is a tragic one in many ways. So many people have been hurt by her death. Mark joins us once again from Houston to tell us about another side of this story. Mark?
Well, Dot, it is another side, but I want to remind everybody that in this story, we are not taking sides, but showing the human side of what this tragedy has caused the Saldivar family. Tina Rogers is Doug Tinker's assistant, and she has been with Yolanda Saldivar ever since the arrest and has been with her every step through this trial. We caught up with her just moments after the judgment came down today, and here's that story.
She still holds Yolanda Saldivar's clothes, and unlike down on the streets, her tears are not tears of joy. And she holds fond memories of the woman that many Selena fans say they will never forgive. It's a human side of the suspect that no one else has been allowed to see since the shooting.
I would consider her my very good friend, and I plan to write to her, and I plan to send her pictures of my baby as she grows, and I plan to continue to be close to her family. Her family is a beautiful family, and they're just down to earth, and they're sweet, and I'm happy that I met them.
Tina Rogers is Doug Tinker's assistant. She says both her and Mr. Tinker consider Saldivar innocent, and more importantly, consider her a friend.
I don't think that she needed to go to jail for life. I don't, and go to prison, and but it's going to be okay, and she'll be fine.
But that relationship will now be a long-distance one, filled with cards, letters, and photos, and very few personal visits.
And again, Dot, this was a tragedy for everybody concerned. We're not trying to minimize what Yolanda Saldivar did or what happened to the Quintanilla family, only just show you that other human side, kind of a side that you haven't seen throughout this whole trial because Yolanda Saldivar has been really kept from the media and kept from the press. But this woman knows better than anybody what that family and what Yolanda Saldivar has gone through over the past couple of weeks. As a matter of fact, it was very emotional for Tina Rogers in court today as that verdict was being read.
Well, I can imagine. And, of course, we got a little glimpse of that when we heard about testimony from Yolanda Saldivar's father on the stand. And I think many people here in Corpus Christi have told us that they do have some empathy and some sympathy for the Saldivar family, despite what Yolanda Saldivar did.
Dot, I'm sorry,
Right, Mark,
there's two people talking to me at the same time, and I couldn't hear what you were saying.
That's okay, Mark. We are going to come back to you at the end of the program for a wrap-up. I know you have some final thoughts on this story. We'll get back to you in just a few minutes. Final thoughts from Mark and Cheryl.
All right, thanks a lot, Dot. The legal maneuvering is all over. The trial is over. The punishment phase is over. The last thing that has to happen is that transfer of Yolanda Saldivar to a prison.
And we understand that will happen directly from Harris County. Yolanda Saldivar will not be going back to Nueces County. We learned this evening she will be transferred directly from the Harris County Jail to the Gainesville Women's Correctional Facility, which is the Texas Department of Corrections Women's Facility, and that's where she will be heading from here.
Carlos Valdez goes back to Nueces County, pretty much a hero tonight. And for Doug Tinker, I'll tell you what, this was not a job he asked for, and he's gotten a lot of admiration from other defense attorneys across Harris County and Nueces County.
He sure has, and everybody asked Mr. Tinker, now what will you do? Doug says, I'm going to go back, and I probably have 10 more murder cases waiting on my desk. Those are murder cases we in Corpus Christi know and are following. He will not be beaten by this, but he is a very admirable defense attorney for taking a case that so many people did not want to take.
All right, Cheryl. thanks a lot. Great working with you the last couple of weeks. And Dot, my final observation, Houston's a nice place to visit, but Corpus Christi's a great place to live. And keep that chair warm back there in Corpus for me, okay?
We're looking forward to having both of you home. Our congratulations go to you. You've done a wonderful job covering this trial, and we're going to be glad to have you back home.
All right, see you in a little bit.
All right. It has been a long 3 weeks following the Saldivar trial in Houston. I think all of us are glad it's finally over. We do look forward to getting Mark and Cheryl and Manuel and Dennis, our Houston crew, back home. Thumbs up to them tonight for a job well done. And these proud South Texans